What's up, everybody? Jeff Barch here with Story Greenlight, and I am stoked to hang out with you today because you know what? If you're like me, you're probably just sitting around at home doing the social distancing thing. And so I figured, hey, let's take this opportunity to connect with each other. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. Going to be talking about been throwing a pretty widespread net, just inviting anyone that I could get to show up here just to say, hey, let's all hang out and let's talk about story. Going to be talking about what story is. And if you've been around Story Greenlight much, you probably already know this framework that I always talk about. But what we're going to do is go beyond that to some psychological brain kind of stuff and talk about how our brains work with story, why it's so powerful, and I'm going to be sorry, I just had a moment of I was going to be I found myself imitating Peter McKinnon and how he does that. Anyway, shout out to Peter McKinnon. So we're going to be talking about storytelling structure, how it works with our brains, and an extra element of that we don't really talk about all that much when it comes to storytelling, about how it can work, about how it can actually be very powerful and effective, or it can fall flat. Going to get into that in just a little bit. So let's see here. Going to check in with the streaming software, making sure that's looking all good. That's good. Going to check in with the studio, make sure. All right. I'm going to assume the sound and picture is all good because no one else is. No, I'm not seeing any complaints. Okay. Adventures in Dirt looks and sounds great. The Thing Under the Thing. You know what? I wasn't actually planning on talking about The Thing Under the Thing, but you know what? If anyone happens to come up with some great examples of it, who am I to say no? So yes, we could absolutely get to The Thing Under the Thing at some point. All right. So here's where we're going to be starting. A lot of the time, people say, okay, I would love to tell stories. I would love to add stories into my content. They kind of feel like they know what storytelling is, but they don't really necessarily have a good way to hang their hat on what it is. And so this is a framework for what storytelling is that I offer to people. And it goes like this. A story is about a character who wants something, who overcomes conflict to get it, and then experiences transformation as a result. That is the framework of any story anyone ever tells in any culture at any time, period. A character who wants something, overcomes conflict to get it, and experiences transformation as a result. So that's where we begin. Now, the question becomes, what makes a story powerful? What really makes it pop? And so the first thing that you want to look into is that stuff in the middle. It's the conflict. What is getting in the way of that? Why is the character not able to achieve what they want to achieve? And that's where emotion in a story comes in, because emotion so often is driven by the desire to have and being prevented from having. You have an expectation, and this expectation is not being met. So, say at this point, you could say, "Hey, I want to go out and meet with friends at my favorite restaurant, but the restaurant is closed because there's this bug that's taking over the entire globe, and everyone's staying at home and not going out." So, that's so depending on how much you were wanting together with this specific group of friends, that's where the emotion would come from. But like, you can't have what you want. So we could go into all sorts of details about that, about those elements. But what I want to move into right now is the idea of what story can, what the connection that story has to our brains. So here's something that was I found fascinating. I made a video about this maybe about a year and a half ago at this point. If you've not heard of this book, fascinating book, you should check it out. It's called How Emotions Are Made: The Secret Life of the Brain, and it's written by a lady by the name of Lisa Feldman Barrett. She is a neuroscientist and a psychologist. And what she does is she lays out a framework of her own for how the brain comprehends and makes sense of literally anything in the world from the day we're born and we're just barely conscious until the day we die. There is a process that our brain goes through in order for us to understand anything. So, what our brain needs, number one, it needs two things to make sense of anything at all. It needs something called a model, it needs a mental model, and it needs instances. Now, before I explain what these models and these instances are and how it relates to the brain and how it relates to the story, I want to sidetrack that for a moment, and I want to ask you, so you can think about this and drop this into the chat. How is the coronavirus, the COVID-19 thing, affecting you right now? So think about that. I want to hear how this is actually real life, real world affecting you right now. Now, in case at some point someone sees a replay of this and says, COVID-19, coronavirus, what are you talking about? In a nutshell, there is a virus that evidently started out in China, and it started spreading, and China tried to keep this bug inside China. It didn't work, and now it's spreading around the world, and the virus is literally going viral. How often do you actually think of that? A virus going viral? Because that's that's how viruses spread. And so all that. So hopefully, Lord willing, this will be over very soon. And in a perfect world scenario, we will come to a place where we look back and say, what was the big deal about? That's how I'm looking. That's what I would love to see. So hopefully someone will eventually see this and say, what was the big deal? What are you talking about? Virus, blah, social distancing, what? All right, so that's the idea. And my question is how this is affecting you, because let me just let you know, this is how it's affecting me right now. Many of you may know there's a show on NBC called American Ninja Warrior that is in its 12th season. Very, very popular show. Many people here in the United States know about it, and actually a lot of people around the world know about the show. Production has been shut down for American Ninja Warrior. They made a public announcement of that, and that happened on, I want to say it was Friday, so just a couple days ago. And they were in the middle of production here in Los Angeles. And they said, you know what, we need to stop. Bam, cut it off. And there are many other large television shows where the networks have just gone, no more travel, done, shut down, boom. And I don't feel comfortable actually giving details about those certain shows because I'm not sure whether that stuff has been publicly announced, and so I want to be careful of any non-disclosure agreements that I might be responsible for having privileged information, etc. So point being, all this stuff is happening in Los Angeles. All these television shows are being shut down, and what that means is the bulk of us here in LA, we're guns for hire. We're freelancers. Stoppin'. Michael M., I see you say, yeah, I'm sad because Survivor filming is postponed because of it. Yes, that's one of the shows. They shut down Survivor. They shut down production on Survivor. So a lot of us here in Los Angeles, we're guns for hire. And if there's nothing for a freelance editor to cut. I don't work. If I don't work, I don't get a paycheck from editing. So that's one of those things. I'm not currently on Ninja. I'm on another show that is I'm on another show that is related to the production company that does Ninja. So currently, I'm still working. Having said that, I'm actually going to be editing remotely. I'm going to be, which is the first time. I mean, I've done remote editing gigs in the past, but nothing on a show this big. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a challenge. So that's one of the things. And even something, even some the ripple effect goes down from that, because when productions shut down in Los Angeles, it affects everyone who supports productions. My church, it's a place called Ecclesia Hollywood. You can find out about it at churchinhollywood.com. Our church didn't meet this morning, and we met online. And our pastor was talking about how the security guard, who also happens to be named Jeff, he said that he's a full-time security guard, and all his gigs for this week just vanished. They didn't have because all the stuff that he does is security for television and film production in the city of Los Angeles, and no one's shooting right now. Boom, he's out of work. So this ripple effect, it affects a lot of people in ways that you might not expect. Now, the reason I went down this rabbit hole is because we're talking about this book by Lisa Feldman Barrett called How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain, and How Our Brain Makes Sense of Anything and Everything We Ever Learn in the World. So, what we're going to be doing is what we need to do for the first element of this is we need a mental model. And what that is, a mental model is a brain's concept of what it is. What actually is going on, and how can your brain even understand the concept of something? So, for instance, you know what? Let me see if I can pull this up here. Normally, most of the time when I'm doing one-on-one consulting and I'm hanging out with the people in the green room, our membership here at Story Greenlight, most of the time I use Zoom. So it's not quite as easy for me to share my desktop and do stuff like that. Where is, looking for my favorites. No, not that one. Not that one. Oh, come on, I just saw this. Hang with me here. Okay, there it is. Okay, so my little daughter she's about she's about 15 months old, and she is learning about all kinds of things. So right now, you could say my daughter's learning about what is a chair. And so she says, okay, that high chair thing where I sit in and they give me food. Well, okay, actually, forgive me, I'm getting ahead of myself. A mental model. She needs to know what a chair is and what you do with a chair. And it's like, okay, a chair is this thing that I sit in. So she's learning about that. Then the next element of something else where she might be getting a little bit older and hear the terms of this word love, and she has to know what on earth is this thing called love, which as soon as I say those words, I hear that song, this thing called love. Da, da, da. Anyway, sorry if that's in your head. It's going to be in my head for a while now, and I have no one to blame but myself. Damn it. So she needs to wrap her head around what this thing is, and is it a physical act, because that's what some people talk about? Is it something where you is it warm gushy feelings, or is it no gushy feelings at all, because it's just a choice that you make? She needs to be able to understand what this is at all. So so that's the first step. You need to be able to have a concept of what a thing is to begin with. That's the mental model. Number two element that Barrett says that our brains need to understand anything is we need instances. So when we're talking about instances, going back to my little daughter, she says, okay, this high chair that they put me in where they give me food, that is a chair. It's one of the things that I sit in. And then she has another little, sometimes she sits in the glider in the corner of our living room and she thinks that's pretty cool. And then another time she ends up sitting, oh, is this going to work? Damn it. Oh, come on. If you can kind of see that, she's basically sitting on the dog. That's Saint, our German Shepherd, and he is pretty much the most patient, long-suffering canine in the history of the world. So eventually, this instance of my daughter sitting on the dog, eventually she'll figure out that the dog is not a chair. But it's one of those things that it's one of those things where, not all the instances make sense. So let's connect this to the news currently at hand. So I already explained a little bit for people who might be seeing this later down the road, what coronavirus is, what COVID-19 is, and what's happening, how it's spreading around the world, and how the virus is literally going viral. That's our mental model. That's the idea of it's a disease that's going around the world, and the world is taking extreme measures to slow the spread of this disease. So that's the mental model. The instances are what you're typing in or what you're typing in the chat. So looking at the chat, let's see some instances of what this is happening, of what this is like in your world. I gave an instance of my own world, what's happening where, my anchor gig for this year for editing for Ninja could be in jeopardy. It could be delayed. It will probably, I predict all this is just going to be pushed downstream and then people are going to pick back up. But in the meantime, we don't know what's going to happen. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Okay, so let's go back up into the chat. Audio is pretty crispy. Well, thank you. Very good. Glad to hear. Good morning to all. Carpet Pythons. Hey, do you, okay, you're in Australia. Random factoid. Gotta love carpet pythons. I was born in Adelaide, but I grew up most of my life here in the United States, mostly in South Dakota and Iowa, which is why I do not sound like an Aussie anymore. But at one point, I did. Let's see. School was canceled for 2 weeks starting tomorrow, says Michael M. Shops up. Gotta love Carpet Python says shops are empty and waiting in line to get food. Corolla in Paris. Hello, Corolla. Good to see you. Bonjour. Guten Tag. I need to get home to Paris tomorrow from Germany. I need to hope France will not close its borders before I'm in. Dang. Yes. That would, I hope you get home too, Corolla. Enrique. Right now I'm affected because of the virus because it stopped all gatherings of people over a certain number. I was on a tour with a live arena show, so now I'm unemployed, have been sent home. Dude, I feel for the performers. I feel for the people on Broadway. I have a number of musician friends that they're not doing gigs. They're not doing gigs, and that's sorry to hear that, Enrique. That's frustrating. That's frustrating, man. Pam at Stationary Nerd. Hello, Pam. Working lots of overtime related to COVID public information and emergency response. Working from home after tomorrow. Yeah. John Cunningham. Canceled family trip to Tulum, Mexico. Oh. That's a bummer. And he says, my wife is coughing from allergies. Can you imagine the public response on a plane? Yes, that's called they'd be pulling out the tar and feathers. No bueno. Whew. The bars on Broadway in Nashville were just asked to close until further notice. Crazy bad for tourism, says Joseph Wilson. Panic. Let's see. Not sure if we have any. That's Michael M. People who use the term coronavirus are getting demonetized on YouTube too because it falls under the sensitive topics category. Whoops. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Well, let's see. Okay, so for the moment, I don't want to take the time to answer every single comment here, every single instance, because that would get old. But let's see. GrooveX said my kids' daycare got closed, borders closed, shops out of basic stuff like toilet paper. My freelance gigs for the coming 3 months have been canceled. That's all in Germany. Dang, that is crazy. That is crazy. And as Enrique says, yeah, that's a lot all at once. Wow. Okay, so hopefully this provides some perspective for, okay, coronavirus, disease spreading around the world, that's the model, and the instances are how it's affecting everyone. So that's the those are the first two elements there. Now let's take that a little farther and say how and connect this more to storytelling. So how do we actually learn as we go along in life? How do we gather instances? You know, if we are to understand things, we need to have an idea of what they are, and then we need to have examples and be able to wrap those examples and make sense of them all within this framework, or whatever the framework is, virtually speaking, and make sense of it all. So the two ways that we actually gather instances. Number one, we live them ourselves, and that's the primary way that we gather instances. It's called life experience. And when they are in the past, we recall them often in the form of memories or stories. Sometimes memories are stories, not all stories are memories, whatever. So there's that. The primary way that we collect instances are by living them in our own life story. Now, the second way that we are likely to gather instances is through hearing it from other people. And when we do that, a lot of the times these people are giving those instances to us in the form of a story. Hey, I mean, even just your comments in the chat right here. This is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. It's tough. Right there, we have the formula for a story right there. You guys want, Enrique wants to keep working. Enrique wants to stay on tour, but the tours are being shut down, and so he's being sent home, currently unemployed. What happens next? That's the story. That's Enrique's story that he's living out right there. And that goes back to a character who wants something, overcomes conflict to get it, and is transformed by the result. Now, so we have these ideas of models and instances. And because of that, people who tell stories hold a lot of power over the world around us, because when we tell a story, we are adding an instance to people's mental models. So when we're adding those extra instances, we literally have the possibility of telling a story and changing the way someone thinks about the world. We can tell a story and change someone's mind. Now, if that's not powerful, I don't know what is. And that's something that most of us know that instinctively, and we've been doing that in one form or another for the bulk of our lives. But to have it laid out like that, it kind of blew my mind, and hopefully it's something that is that's helpful and connects some dots for you. Now, Hardy Hotel, so we can spread instances around like Johnny Appleseed. Why, yes, this is true. We certainly can. Ben and Sheila Hardy from Hardy Hotel, they are members of the Green Room, and so we've been talking a lot about this stuff too. So, excuse me. So that's why storytelling is so powerful, because it is literally tied into the way our brains make sense of anything and everything in the world, from day one to the day we die. Now, the question then becomes, how can you make the stories matter more? And what's the difference between a story that does land and makes people sit up and say, whoa, wow, okay. What's the difference between that and a story that someone says, oh, that's nice, eh. Here's one of the examples. Here's one of the big reasons why. It's going to be tough for me to keep a straight face on this one. The idea of, and I'll explain why in just a second. When you're telling a story, there needs to be a so what to it. In the story world, we tend to call it stakes, as in, what are the stakes? What is at stake? Now, one of the things is you always want to elevate the stakes. You want to raise the stakes whenever possible. And so we were talking with our monthly Green Room meeting yesterday, and everyone was saying, hey, please tell me you have a picture of a T-bone steak so you can just go, you're raising the stake, because, raising the stakes. I don't know. I was laughing. Hopefully you're laughing or at least groaning right now. Raising the stakes. I literally had an element. I had a moment in a TV show that I cut for Animal Planet. No, it wasn't Animal Planet. It was the Sci-Fi Network. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was called Wizard Wars, and it was basically American Idol for magicians, for amateur / semi-pro magicians, and they were competing in front of a panel of judges. And so one of these teams of magicians literally did this thing where they had a box with a T-bone steak in it, and the guy held the steak, and then he raised the box up, and the other guy says, "Oh, I see what you're doing. You're raising the stakes." And I just love that, and it's stuck in my head forever. So let's see. Stakes. So here's how one raises the stakes in a story. You add an element that says, so what? Or what's the catch? Or what could go wrong? For example, let's just say, in a purely hypothetically, that a young guy moves to Los Angeles and is looking to get into the entertainment industry. He gets a job as a production assistant in a production office, and one day one day he's going out, and dang it, I've already messed up the story. Let's back up. Say, in a purely hypothetical situation, a young guy moves out to Los Angeles and he goes out to a movie. And when he comes back out after the movie, he comes out to the parking lot and he can't find his car. So what? At that point, well, it's kind of a bummer. For a moment, you might have a moment of, oh crap, did someone steal my car? But eventually you find it and it's no big deal. Now, the stakes in that scenario are very low. Now, is it possible that someone stole this guy's car? Sure, it's possible. It's Los Angeles, and but it's not likely. frankly, it's just not likely. Now, let's change the story and say, all right, young guy is in Los Angeles wanting to get established in the entertainment industry, and he works as an office production assistant for a production company, and they send him out on an errand, and he goes to the mall in Burbank and parks in the parking lot, goes into the mall, finds out that he's gone to the wrong place, and so says, okay, well, got to go back, goes out to the parking lot, cannot find his car. And there are 3 different parking lots at this mall. They all feel identical. There is no way to find his car. So he looks and he starts walking and walking and looking and looking and looking. And how on earth is he going to find his car? His phone rings. It's his boss. Where are you? Everyone is hungry. What's the deal? Turns out this errand that this guy has been on, in this purely hypothetical scenario, was for picking up lunch for 20 people in the office. And this guy is out here, and it's getting later and later, and the food is cold, and everyone's hungry. They all are going to hate this guy, and the guy is terrified that he's about to get fired, and he will never work for this production company again. Furthermore, he will never work in this town again, and he may as well just go back to Omaha, Nebraska, where he had come from. That, my friends, has some stakes to it. That's called what could go wrong? Well, maybe his car was stolen, or maybe he just can't find his car, and he's going to end up looking like an idiot to everyone at the office, and he's going to get fired, and he's never going to work in that town again. All of a sudden, this version of the story matters more because there is something at stake. There's a so what to it. So, gonna pause right here because y'all are dropping some comments, and let's interact with that. Vita DePie, by the way, he says, I just missed this notification. What happened if I disappeared? It might seem like I've disappeared in terms of presence here on the YouTube channel. Basically, what I've been doing for the last 6 months here is I've been spending a lot of time jumping into the basically building elements and infrastructure in the background for building a business and actually making this something that is scalable beyond just me trading hours for dollars. And I'm working like a crazy person to make this, to make Story Greenlight a channel that is hugely, and it's not just a YouTube channel, it's an actual community where we're all learning and growing together. So unfortunately, that has meant that I have had less available time and attention to creating free content on this channel. That's why it seems like I've disappeared. But for those of you who are on the Story Greenlight insider email list, you know things are still moving. So that's what's going on. That's the general answer to that, Vita DePie. Dignity exploring human rights in daily life. Hello, good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you and yours are safe. Hear from you soon. Awesome, very cool. Greg Holcomb, what's up, brother? Good to see you, man. Storytelling like music is a universal language. Why, yes. Let's see here. But it was a big deal. Groovex, dumb question. Do you mean raising the stakes for the viewer? Wouldn't that mean that the viewer has to be connected to the story already? That is an excellent question. So you have stakes in the characters in your story, but as content creators, if we're here and we're creating content on YouTube or something like YouTube, or we're telling stories, we also need to be aware that our audience has stakes as well. Now, a lot of the time, the idea of why does someone watch a YouTube video? Because they want to learn something. The main reasons people watch a YouTube video are because they want to either learn something or they want to be entertained / to not be bored. Now, if I want to, so if you want to learn how to, I don't know, there are a bazillion things that you'd want to learn. If you want to learn how to fix a computer monitor because it's acting strangely, what are the stakes to that? What happens to you, the viewer, if you don't figure out how to fix this monitor? Well, you might have to go out and buy a new monitor. So there you go. If you're looking to be entertained, a lot of the time, the stakes are even lower. What happens if this video that I want to watch is not entertaining and I'm still bored? Very little. I just go click and I move on to another video. So that, which is why as storytellers and communicators, whenever there's a chance that we can speak to things that are more substantive in nature, not just speaking about what's on the surface, but if we can actually speak to things that are deeper and more substantive below the surface, that are actually driving what we see on the surface, then that is where we start engaging the concept called the thing under the thing. What most people usually talk about is what's up here on the surface, what I've referred to as the thing, and the idea of how you make that mean more is if you address elements underneath here, either by a number of different elements that I don't really have time to get into right now. But suffice it to say, you're talking about elements that operate at a more core level, called the thing under the thing. That's what I refer to that. So that would be a way to add stakes to your content, possibly for in terms of you, the character, or whoever the character is in the story, but also to have the audience care more. Because if you're talking about, okay, you make a video about the coronavirus and you're talking about how diseases spread. That's what we're talking about on the surface. That's the thing. What is really driving a lot of this interaction about the coronavirus? The thing under the thing, ladies and gentlemen, is fear. It's the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if what is happening in Italy right now with their hospitals being overwhelmed because this virus literally reached this virus reached a tipping point where it multiplied at such an exponential rate that the 1% of people who get sick from it all ended up in the hospitals at once, and it overwhelmed their hospital system. So we see that happening in Italy right now, and we say, oh crap, is this going to be happening here for us, wherever here and us happens to be? And Cabin Life with Glenn and Maureen, the thing under the thing, fear and self-preservation, 100%, absolutely. So that is, so when you can speak, so going back to Groove X's comment about raising the stakes for the viewer, if you're talking about the surface element of just how a virus spreads, but if you can actually address something about the fear, what should we be fearful of? And is there a way where we can mitigate, how we can lessen fear, how we can spread faith and positivity and responsibility? All of a sudden, you have done a huge service to your audience member by not just talking about the surface, you're talking about what they're really worried about and how to move forward in light of that. Oh, let's see. Where back to comments. Apex Photo Adventures. Where in South Dakota did you live? For a while, we lived in from 2nd to 6th grade. My family and I lived in Huron, South Dakota, home of the South Dakota State Fair and the world's largest pheasant. It sits on top of a liquor store on the west side of town, and local lore says that this, I swear, this pheasant, it's 2 stories tall. The liquor store itself is 1 story, and then there's this enormous pheasant, about 2 stories tall, sitting on top of the thing, and it's missing one of its toes. And local lore says that a drunk hunter shot off one of the toes of the giant pheasant. Who knows whether that's true or not? Do you have a connection to South Dakota? Apex Photo Adventures. Curious to know. Let's see. Greg Holcomb, maybe just bought that car and the tags hadn't been brought up to date. Maybe. Maybe. But they don't usually tell you just for having expired tags. They'll give you a ticket. Nice big fat ticket first. Cabin life with Glenn and Maureen. So if I'm lost in the forest, let the viewer know I'm about to become a bear's dinner. Maybe. Could be. So, and Grizz270 says, it's true, I was that drunk hunter. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Okay. Anyway, so that is something I want to offer to you guys, is the idea of that story framework. It's where a character wants something, overcomes conflict to get it, and experiences transformation as a result. And putting that together with Feldman Barrett's concept of mental models plus instances. Instances are how we understand the world. And so when we tell stories, we add instances to the hearts and minds of our audiences. And because we add those instances by telling stories, we have the very real possibility of changing people's mind and changing the way they look at the world. Then, as we tell those stories, we need to find out, we need to be aware of, so what? We need to be aware of the stakes. If we're telling stories that don't have much in the way of stakes, don't expect people to care much. Okay, here's another example. Here's another example with the coronavirus COVID-19 thing. Say that you have a view of this where you're thinking, people, we're talking about a bug here, which is basically like the garden variety flu. It has very little to no effect other than on 99% of the people. So basically, we're getting all freaked out about this bug thing that's not gonna have any effect on 99% of the people. What are the stakes in that scenario? I mean, one could say, basically the general idea is, in that story, there's very little stakes at all. A bunch of people might get a cold. Boo-hoo. Why are we all freaking out and stockpiling toilet paper like it's going out of style? So that's one version of that story. And I'll confess, that's basically where my mind had been for a while until it changed. Because I had another instance. I experienced another instance that changed my model of how I understood this story of the coronavirus. When I saw an article, which, you know what? Let me see if I can. I want to see if I can find this article really quick. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I can go, I posted it on my personal page here. It is how canceled events and self-quarantine save lives in one chart. I will drop that in the chat right here. This article changed my mind. This is the instance that changed the way that I think about this whole scenario. Because when you consider the idea of, consider this alternate scenario where instead of 99% of people who get this bug get a cold, wah, boo-hoo. But when you think of it in a different scenario, here's another way to think of it. When you have a virus spreading so rapidly at an exponential curve that just goes up, 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 like hockey stick style exponential curve, the speed at which it spreads is astounding. And when that happens, even if only 1% of people have serious medical reactions to the bug, what happens when that 1% of people ends up being 80% of the population of the entire developed world? All of a sudden, you have an enormous number of people dropping in on hospitals and the emergency rooms all at once. And that's where things start getting real. And that's what is happening right now in northern Italy. That's why people are literally being quarantined. Like, it's crazy. People are not allowed to walk out in the streets in northern Italy because it's that bad. So in that scenario, what are the stakes? Well, hey, that gets some very real. That gets real really quickly, because all of a sudden it's not just about, am I going to get sick? It's about, will hospitals be able to function? And will the people in the hospitals be able to be treated? Will all these people in the hospitals who already have compromised immune systems, will they get exposed to this? And will the complications spiral out of control there? And will more people die? So that is an example of shifting the stories, where one version, where frankly it's much more about me. If I get the cold, it's no big deal, and for the vast majority of humanity, it's not a big deal. What's the big deal? No, that's one version. But when you look at the other version, all of a sudden the stakes are very real. Here is, you know what? Just because I saw this, and Chantel, my wife, and I saw this, and this was also fascinating. I'm going to drop this link into the chat as well. This is an article from the Washington Post. It says why outbreaks like coronavirus spread exponentially and how to flatten the curve. And what they do is they show animations that show simulations of how things spread, like a disease, something like a generic disease might spread in different scenarios. It is fascinating. It is fascinating. So want to pass that along, because frankly, I do feel like there are a lot of people who are really scared. And to be blunt, if you want to have a reason to be scared, there are absolutely reasons to be scared and frustrated. Having said that, we have an opportunity to say, okay, how can we move forward? How do we choose to react to this? How can we be of service to everyone else? And frankly, Here's the thing. Here's more stakes to that alternate version of the coronavirus scenario. If the so what, if the stakes are not about people getting colds or flus, and it's about will hospitals be able to keep people alive? If you're asking that kind of a difference in question, then the idea of social distancing doesn't, the idea of social distancing and slowing down the spread of this disease so that it doesn't become apocalyptic, so it doesn't bring the country to its knees like it is doing right now in Italy. All of a sudden, social distancing isn't a dumb thing. It's something that we can all do to help each other out. Stakes, storytelling. So what? What's the downside? What could go wrong? So, let's go back into the chat. Y'all are leaving some comments here. Let's see. Going back. Apex Photo Adventure. I lived in Belfouche. Moved here from Phoenix last year. No small creator. Hey! Awesome. Excellent. Very cool. And of course, my friend Greg Holcomb happens to know that Belfouche, South Dakota, is the geographical center of the USA. Because Greg is the kind of person who knows these things. That's the kind of person Greg is, which I think is awesome. Let's see, Michael M. We have a store here called Asterdale Saddlery, and they have this big horse statue of it. There are stories of teens stealing it, graffitiing, and putting it back. Nice. Cabin Life with Glenn Maureen. Good storytelling can have an impact on people's lives. 100%. Absolutely. GrooveX. I once learned to get a listener or viewer invested in your story, you have to pick them up at where they are, meaning tell the story in a way that your viewer feels he's part of your storyline. And that sits in line with the thing under the thing, as that's the basic experience we all share. Cool. Very cool. Cabin Life with Glenn Maureen. This current situation is prompting people to self-isolate, social distancing, dive into social media more, but don't meet face-to-face. This is a problem for humanity. 100%. I don't disagree. What I would also say is that the social distancing thing could also be seen as a way for all of us to help slow the spread of this thing. Now, if we all take this as a reason to say, I shall social distance myself from here on out forever. Agreed. That's an issue. And Corolla says, that same curve in another article is also what made me realize I can be the solution instead of the problem. While before I thought it's a bit overdramatic. I love that. 100%. Esperanto Variety Show says, Hardy Hotel is aware of the stakes. That will never get old. No, it won't. Esperanto Variety Show is also, Thomas at Esperanto Variety Show is also a member of the Green Room. So I predict that joke will live on for quite a while now. Let's see. And a viewer says, guys, don't panic. Here in Korea, we're having fewer infected people. Awesome. Very cool. And Cabin Life with Glenn Maureen was just pointing out a possible side effect for the masses, not the 1%. Totally. Alrighty. Grizz270. I'm afraid to share my emotions. That is why I like my sawmill. No way of showing emotions when milling, but doesn't make a great story either. You know, I'm going to push back on that, man. You don't have to be the dude who breaks down and ugly cries when you're ripping 2x4s on your sawmill. You don't have to be that. That's not who you are, and it doesn't need to be. I do think if you had examples, one of the things that I'd like to talk about, one of the things I talk about with people is the idea of when you're adding elements of story into non-narrative material. So saying you're doing a video on how to run your sawmill, and you're doing a specific process to make a certain kind of batch of lumber, cut down or whatever. And you know that's a tutorial, that's an instructional video. You're saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, this is how we add all these things, this is how the process goes. What if you are saying, what along the way, let me tell you about the first time that I did this. I had no clue what I was doing, and this is how it went. It did this and this and this, and that thing shot clear across the room, and it busted a hole in my kitchen window, and my wife was there, and she said, what the hell are you doing? And the cats got scared and ran around the kitchen. Just all that kind of stuff. You don't have to go into necessarily into crazy emotional stuff in order to add stakes or strength to the story, because you could literally end up raising the stakes by saying, hey, you need to be careful when you're doing this part of the process, because if you don't do it right, you could send this thing shooting all across the room, and it could hit something or somebody. All of a sudden, you have stakes in a story that you're adding to an instructional video. Throwing that out there. It doesn't have to be crazy emotional, but just know that there are options. There are lots of options. And Craig says, obvious guy says, this guy needs to improve his sawmill safety. And that's a potential cartoon that you could have pop up. What Greg is referring to is, I would be curious to know how many people on this stream have ever heard of a TV show called Blind Date. It was one of the first TV shows I ever worked on in Hollywood in 2000 to 2002-ish. I started there as an assistant editor, and then I ended up getting promoted to full editor at this show, Blind Date. And it had a whole bunch of cartoons flying all over the place. And different characters like Therapist Joe, or as Therapist Joe says, some psychological insight to what's happening with the characters on screen. Or Obvious Guy says something super, super obvious, which ends up being funny because it's that obvious. Anyway, Lily Tree. Hey, what's up, Lily Tree? Good to see you. Greetings from across the pond. How are things, Lily Tree? You're in England, yes? I'd be curious to know how things are going over there. What you're seeing with the whole virus, social distancing, all the things. Let's see. Harley, another green room member, says, I remember Blind Date being on TV, never watched it. Well, that's okay. Your life will move on. Clearly your life has moved on. View from above. Hey Ida, good to see you, man. Good running into you at Social Media Marketing World. Yeah. So let's see. Looking at the free political prisoners of police immediately. Try to do what you really want. You have strong responsibility, so agree. I'm not 100% what you're getting at there, free political prisoners. And Live Free says, I watch Blind Date. You watch it? Is it still on the air somewhere? I can't imagine it's not airing at 3 in the morning somewhere in the world. That show will never die. I can't. And they put out over 2,000 episodes of that show. A regular TV season has Well, these days, well, it used to have 13 to 15 or 19 episodes. Now, these days, you're lucky if a season gets an order for 9 or 11 episodes. Blind Date, just they just machine cranked those puppies out at like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those episodes. It was insane. That's a lot of hot tubs, people. That's a lot of hot tubs. Um, Greg says, I think there's a reboot. Okay, all right. I think there's a reboot just like they rebooted Super Nanny. Yes, this is true. England, yes, says Lily Tree. We're still about on business as usual here, which seems more crazy given the lockdowns elsewhere. Well, you know, y'all are the source of the keep calm and carry on. What's this? What's the sign? Keep calm and insert snarky comment here from World War II. That was some real stakes back in World War II. Keep calm and carry on. When you had the Germans dropping bombs on London, talk about adding stakes to the things. Michael M. Yeah, there are 582 episodes of Survivor. This season is the season for all of the past winners. Insane. Dang, dude. That's a lot of stuff. Man, oh man. So here's what I'm going to be saying. Well, here's what I'm just want to, here's what I'd like to offer. As we, I'm on the fence whether to wrap up or keep going because really, I'm enjoying hanging out with y'all. And if you have any questions, if you have any specific questions, now is the time to drop them, because otherwise, I think now's the time to. Sorry, I just saw a question pop in, and my focus is beginning to wander. Let's see. Lily Tree. Apparently, there's been buying of tea though. Panic buying of tea. Oh dear. Now that's a big deal. Stakes for the British. We're running out of tea. Oh dear. Okay. Hardy Hotel. What are some ways we can speak to the thing under the thing that isn't too direct? That is an excellent question. So, ways that we can speak to the thing under the thing that isn't too direct. Okay, well, there are, okay, I'm thinking in terms of whether I should give an example from my own stuff. Because the thing is, there are a bunch of ways. There are a bunch of examples. Okay, let's talk about okay, let's just go back to the coronavirus thing here, because that's the main thing on everyone's mind right now. So we've talked about the underlying elements driving a lot of this are fear and self-preservation. So what are, there are, you can show people acting in that way, and you can just show it without saying people are really scared, people are wondering if they're going to have enough toilet paper, which I still don't get. Why are people hoarding the toilet paper? Anyway, you can show people, you can show the lines of people trying to get into the stores, people walking out with 8 cases of toilet paper, walking out of Costco or Sam's Club or whatever. And all you have to do is show that. You don't have to say what the thing under the thing is. You can just show things, and you can let your audience make some connections that way. Um, Hardy Hotel. If this helps, let's think of this as styles, such as the different types of karate. This is the Jeff room. This is the Jeff method. This is the green room method. Let's see. I'm just gonna put that in timeout. Different styles. Jeff method, green room method. more toilet paper equals better self-preservation. That could be. Here's an example. As of this moment, my little daughter just woke up from a nap. So what's happening on the surface is there's a baby crying. Now, what might be something underneath that? It basically, what's the thing under the thing to a baby crying in the room next door? It's whatever you choose to connect to it as the content creator or as a storyteller. You could say, why on earth is the baby crying when I'm on a live stream? Well, that would be pretty self-centered of me because it's not just about me. I mean, chances are you guys can't hear it. You guys can't hear it at all. Based on past experience, pretty sure you can't hear her crying. But one could also say, what's the thing under the thing to a baby crying? That you could say, she just slept for 3 hours straight. That is awesome. She's growing up. And you can talk about how her sleep hasn't been the best in different times, and how this is something that it's improving the state of our family life because she's getting better at sleeping. And so the thing under the thing is growth. It's the idea of making a better life for our family because the little baby is learning how to sleep longer when she takes naps or something like that. That's not exactly what's going down. I mean, she's always been a pretty good sleeper. I take that back. Strike that. She's not always been a very good sleeper. But we're okay. We're surviving. We're doing okay. The point is, though, when you are talking about what's on the surface and what are things under the thing, number one, it's whatever you decide to connect it to, and then to I believe it's Ben. It is you, Ben Hardy. Well, it's either Ben Hardy or Sheila Hardy, his wife, at the Hardy Hotel. Talking about the thing under the thing, it's up to you to say how obvious you want to be. If you want to attach something like that whole element of baby hasn't been sleeping well and now she just took a 3-hour nap and that's great, you'd have to explain that more clearly and obviously. So to communicate that and to eventually get to the point where you get my wife on camera getting teary-eyed because she's so relieved that the baby is sleeping now or something like that, you'd have to have enough explanation for that to land, for her gratitude at improving our life, our family life, is actually happening, that kind of a thing. So that's something to consider there. Let's see here. Cabin life with Glenn and Maureen. More toilet paper equals better self-preservation. Yes, at a very fundamental level, I suppose this is true. And Grizz says, if anyone's having problems getting toilet paper, I have plenty of free pine cones. I just request shipping cost. What a guy. Bringing the world together, Grizz. I dig it, man. Good stuff. And Thomas at Esperanto Variety Show. Keep calm and carry on. My understanding is that these were posters that were made but never used. They are meant for after the enemy invaded and took over. Never happened, but interesting. I'd heard regarding the keep calm and carry on. I'd heard that they were made, but they were made in hopes of calming down the general public. But my understanding was the general public just kept their stiff upper lip and said, no, we're all in this together. We will fight the Germans by living our lives, and we will not cower in fear. We will carry on. They didn't need the signs. And so my understanding is that's why they didn't put the signs up, because the government was expecting the whole population to be freaking out, but they actually didn't. I don't know. I could be wrong. That's my understanding of how it went down. Let's see. Llamaland. I've been disinfecting the house with alcohol and bleach the whole day. I can breathe calm now. Hey, very nice. Very nice. Grizz says she just woke up from a nap and she has a gift all wrapped up for you to address. Oh yes, please believe this happens. She does leave presents. And sounds like I'm getting an error message that YouTube isn't receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. If that happens, my apologies. My apologies. It's probably because everyone around us is streaming Netflix. They're Netflixing and chilling all at once. We shall see. Wikipedia seems to say I was wrong, says Esperanto Variety Show. Well, you know what? We'll see. So, hey, let's just, I'm in the case that the baby has left a present, which is an entirely legitimate possibility. That's a very real possibility. I'm going to check in with my wife and make sure that everything is okay on that. And I am going to say, for now, let's just wrap this up. Hope this has been some good ideas to prompt your storytelling and to say, hey, why is storytelling such a big deal? And why is this such a big deal? And how can we make our stories matter more? So there is that. I did see Groove actually just squeezing in right under the bar here. Did having a kid change your view on business or the industry? I found that since my daughter got born, it really changed me. Let me tell you how things have changed for me since having kids. I now want to be at home so I can see them and be present for them as a father. I want to be present for my wife. I want to be present for my family. And when I'm gone on a broadcast editing gig, I'm gone 13 hours a day. And when I get home, that means that I might be present as their dad for maybe an hour and a half, if that, before the baby goes to bed. That's the only time I'll ever actually see her on a weekday. And my little 4-year-old, he doesn't stay up all that much longer after that. And by the time we're done putting the kids to bed, my brain is gone. I'm just tired, and I'm falling asleep at the dinner table, sitting across from my wife, and I'm going googly-eyed, and because I'm so tired, and she feels like she's getting the leftovers of me. That is the reality that that is the tension that I live in, as I live the dream of engaging in the single best day job that I can ever imagine for myself. That's what I do for a living. I'm making television for a living. In the entertainment capital of the world, I'm living the dream. I'm supporting my family in an expensive city like LA on a single income, and I hardly get to see my kids at all unless I get up before the break of dawn, and I get down to into the city, and I kick butt at the day gig and then come back so I can actually see my kids. So that's how kids have changed me, GrooveX. That's the main idea right there. Hey, so before we wrap up, just want to be just want to offer this to you. There is a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear out there. There are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of questions, and as people spread the fear, as the media puts out article after article trying to get us to be scared and tries to get us to click on their article and to keep clicking and to keep watching and to keep watching, watch the ads, click on the ads, all the things. We don't need to be part of that fear. As a man much wiser than I, said, we have not been given a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So it's my encouragement that this is something that we can be doing for those of us around us. That's my goal here. That's one of the major goals. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to hang out with you all today, to say, hey, there is hope. We don't have to live in fear. We can be a positive voice for the people around us. So I'm just gonna leave you with that. And in the meantime, it has been great hanging out with you. Be well. And and here's the thing. This is the kind of stuff that we talk about all the time in the Green Room, which is the monthly membership that we have here at Story Greenlight. So if you want to learn more about the Green Room and what it is a place that a select group of creators come together and we connect in community like this. We brainstorm ideas, we review each other's content. There are private trainings from yours truly like this, and there's lots of interaction, and it's a place where we can come together and help each other get stuff done. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, there's a link in the description of this right here. And you can also go to storygreenlight.com/greenroom. That's storygreenlight.com/greenroom. And that's where you can learn more and you can get on the waiting list. So if you want to learn more, that's the place to go. And for now, be well and spread the positivity to those of us, to those around you, and we'll be in touch. Be well, everyone. See ya.